Well, the word got around, they said this kid is insane, man. Took up a collection just to send him to the mainland. Get your education, don't forget from whence you came. And the world's gonna know your name. What's your name, man?
Alexander Hamilton. My name is Alexander Hamilton. And there's a million things I haven't done. Just you wait, just you wait.
Welcome to the 2021 Teen Political Forum, an opportunity for high schoolers of Coconut Creek to ask questions and get answers. This last year has been unlike any other, and this is the time for you to ask the many questions you may have for experts and elected officials. This event has been planned by and created for the students of Monarch High School, Coconut Creek High School, Atlantic Technical Magnet School, Dave Thomas Education Center, and College Academy at Broward College. And now, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, recited by Commissioner Sandra Welch.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Well, good evening and welcome. The Coconut Creek Teen Political Forum was approved by our City Commission in 2018, and I'm grateful that the Commission selected me to facilitate the forum. They found value in providing a way for students to raise your questions and get answers from leaders that are making policies that directly affect you. The Teen Political Forum was first developed by the City of Coral Springs about 15 years ago, and this type of open forum is even more relevant today than ever. First, a huge thanks to all the planning committee students who represent the high schools here in Coconut Creek. Some students are working behind the scenes tonight, but all were equally important in making tonight's event happen. And they are from Atlantic Technical High School, Alina George, Tony Maxwell, Akeya Simpson, College Academy at Broward College, Joaquin Martinez, Haley McTee, Emily Adza. Coconut Creek High School, Milken Vasquez, Kyra Bochero Brown, Monarch High School, Jade Francis, Eileen Lee, Anna Julia Nogueira. All of us panelists tonight welcome your questions so we can give you answers. As elected leaders, we're always looking to hear what the public has to say. Again, students have planned this event. Those of us in the city, particularly Bernadette Hughes and Yvonne Lopez and many more, have just assisted and guided along the way. But it was you, the students, who brainstormed, collaborated, and met many times, much more than I probably even know about, towards a successful event. A special thank you tonight to Dr. Sunem Beaton Garcia at Broward College North Campus, which provided us the technology and invaluable resources to conduct this forum. And to Wheelabrator Technologies for their very generous $500 cash award, which will go to the winning school tonight. And thank you to all the students attending. So let's get started.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Welch. Good evening, everyone. My name is Haley McTee. I am a senior at College Academy, and I'm so excited to be here with you all tonight.
Hello, everyone. My name is Joaquin Martinez. I am a senior, and alongside Haley, I'll be moderating this year's Teen Political Forum.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Odza, and I'm a senior. I'll be going over all your questions in the Q&A, and then I'm coming back to ask them at the end of the event. See you then.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tony Maxwell. I'm a junior at Atlantic Technical High School, and I will also be assisting in getting your questions answered.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alina George. I'm a senior at Atlantic Technical High School, and I'll be joining you all after intermission.
Before we get started, we just want to thank Commissioner Sandra Welch, Bernadette Hughes, Yvonne Lopez, John Hartzell, and every other person in Coconut Creek that lent a hand in the making of this year's Teen Political Forum.
Now, we want to explain how the event will run. First, we will introduce our panelists. Then, we will proceed to ask them pre-submitted questions from students. There will be a 5-minute intermission in which we will share a screen that says, "I attended Teen Political Forum." This is your opportunity to take a selfie with your screen so you can submit it to your teachers for extra credit if they're giving it out to you. If you're attending from your phone, please take a screenshot. After intermission, we will hear from our special guests and then move on to our Q&A portion, which Haley will now explain further.
The Q&A portion is your opportunity to ask live questions during today's event. You have 2 ways of doing so. First, via Twitter by tagging us at CreekTPF, or by using the Zoom Q&A function, which is our preferred method. To use this, please look at the bottom of your screen and you should see a tab labeled Q&A. There you can type questions to be reviewed by our backstage team and answered after intermission. We will be accepting questions right until intermission begins, and we will give you warnings about it. But please know that the sooner you submit your questions, the more likely they will be answered. One of our panelists, Congressman Deutsch, will only be here for the first 45 minutes, so please send in any questions you have for him in a timely manner. He will be able to answer some questions before our official Q&A section begins.
After the live Q&A, we will send out a Zoom poll to see which school has the most attendance and therefore wins the prize and the grand prize of $500. Thanks to Wilibrator Technologies. Some of our panelists might be joining later, so let's be aware of that as well.
And now let's welcome the panelists that are here with us currently.
We want to thank all our panelists for coming here today. We know how busy you are, so we're excited to have you here. To get to know you a little bit better, we will have 20 seconds to introduce, you will have 20 seconds to introduce yourself, what you do, and anything else you would like to share. First, we have our current U.S. Congressman for the 2nd District, Ted Deutsch.
Thanks, Joaquin. Great to be with everyone. I'm Ted Deutsch. I represent the 22nd Congressional District in the U.S. House of Representatives. And I'm just thrilled to be here. Looking forward to some good questions. Thanks, everyone, for participating.
And then I do not believe that Representative Hunchovsky is on the line right now, so we will introduce her when she is here.
And the same thing goes for the Supervisor of Elections, Joe Scott. He should be coming, but he is not currently right now here.
No worries. Now we will introduce the Vice Chair of the Broward County Public School Board, Ms. Rupert.
Thank you for the upgrade, but I'm not the vice chair of the school board right now. That is actually Lori Rich Levinson. So you guys have some old information on the website, but it's kind of fun. You know, you still remember me. Probably the last time I did it. I am a teacher, reading teacher, late in life, which means it became a second career for me. I have 3 children that my husband and I adopted, and they're all in their 20s, and they're all successful in their careers. And more importantly, they all graduated from public education. And I can certainly answer questions about education, anything to do with adoption, state legislature, some issues. I might have to, call on my friend Christine for the rest, but I'm pretty open to any questions. And if I don't know it now, I'll get it for you. So thanks for inviting me.
Commissioner Welch, we have already had the pleasure of hearing from you tonight, but we would greatly appreciate if you could introduce yourself.
Sandra Welch. I'm currently serving on the commission for the city of Coconut Creek. I will just share one thing. My dad was hard on us when we were growing up, and he challenged us every day, all 5 of us kids, to learn something new every day. And he would catch us if we tried to pull one over on him and duplicate at the end of the day. And good for him, because I still carry that with me today, and thank him. Learn something new every day. Thank you.
Next, Coconut Creek's Police Chief, Chief Albert Arnell.
Also known as Butch Arnell. Hello, Teen Political Forum. It's great to be back with you again this year. I'm, of course, the police chief, the proud police chief for the Coconut Creek Police Department. I've got approximately 34 years in law enforcement, 28 with a prior agency, and 5.5 here in Coconut Creek. and served as a chief of police 8 years prior to coming here. So I've been a chief of police right around 13 and a half years. Have a beautiful wife, a 16-year-old son who is a sophomore at Stoneman Douglas. It's great to be with you tonight.
Thank you. And now I see that our Supervisor of Elections, Joe Scott, is here. So if you could take 20 seconds to introduce yourself, what you do, and anything else you would like to share, we would love to hear from you.
All right, good evening. Thank you all. I was on the webinar and I could not figure out how to get myself to the panel. I was trying to get myself here. But hey, let me introduce myself. My name is Joe Scott. I'm currently serving as the Supervisor of Elections for Broward County since November of last year. I was elected November of last year and took office in January. And as the Supervisor of Elections, I'm responsible for conducting all of the elections in Broward County. But I'll tell you, even a bigger responsibility than that is making sure that we get as many people in Broward County to try to figure out everyone who's eligible to vote and get them registered to vote and make sure that they have the information that they need to be informed citizens and participate in elections as they come up. And to that end, I want to bring up the fact that we're actually conducting our high school voter registration drive, which is starting tomorrow and will run through the end of the month, which is a competitive program between each of the high schools. And I would love to see everybody 16 and above, if you are eligible to vote, if you're a US citizen, would love to see you go ahead and get yourself registered to vote, and so that you're ready to go when you turn 18 and you'll be ready to participate. So I'm here tonight. I can answer any questions that you might have about voter registration, about participating in elections, as well as anything about voting rights and things you may have heard in the news about the changes to the laws around voting.
Thank you. Now we have Coconut Creek's Senior City Planner and Environmentalist, Ms. Whitman.
Hi, thanks for having me here. I am, like you said, the Senior Planner at the City of Coconut Creek. I also do a lot of the environmental certifications and special projects at the city. So I can answer your questions about planning and zoning and environmental matters and the efforts that Coconut Creek makes. I can also answer any questions about landscape architecture if you have any questions about that. Just a little about myself. I graduated from the University of Florida, and I have a 21-year-old son who's attending Florida State University right now. And the more excited I get about the work that I do, the faster I speak. So if I start going too fast, you just have to let me know and I'll slow down. Thank you for letting me be here tonight.
Thank you. Next up, Dr. Michael Smith, Director and Assistant Professor of Integrated Medical Science at Florida Atlantic University.
You have 1 minute to introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for having me. I'm Dr. Smith. As mentioned, I'm Dr. Smith at Florida Atlantic University, Charles E. Schmidt College of Medicine. I'm an Assistant Professor of Integrated Medical Science, and I'm housed in the Office for Diversity and Inclusion. I do a great deal of work with young people and teenagers since I've moved to South Florida about 3.5 years ago. And I've worked with young people in Broward County as well as Palm Beach County. And I'll attempt to address any questions that I'm able to answer. But thank you all for having me.
Thank you. Now, Mr. David Watkins, Director of Equity and Diversity for Broward County Public Schools.
Good afternoon. David Watkins, Director of Equity and Diversity for Broward County Public Schools. And in the work that I do, I serve students who are in mentoring programs. I work with children who are involved in juvenile justice. We do a lot of work around equity and diversity initiatives for students as well as teachers and administrators. And I'm happy to be here to answer any questions that you may have related to youth involvement in the school system.
Thank you. And our Broward County Commissioner from District 2, Mr. Brogan, will be joining afterwards towards the end of the event today.
Thank you all for joining us this evening and therefore giving students the opportunity to ask questions and voice their opinions about things that matter to them.
Now we will begin our section for pre-selected questions.
Attendees, please keep in mind that Congressman Deutsch will only be here for the next 30 minutes, so be sure to submit your Q&A questions for him quickly.
In the spirit of highlighting many points of views, if any of our panelists would like to respond or add to the answer of another panelist, feel free to ask. Just be sure to wait until your fellow panelist is done giving their response.
Panelists, you will have only 1 minute to respond to each question. I repeat, 1 minute.
This brings us to our first question, which is for School Board Member Rupert. What does the plan for reopening schools look like in the fall, and how will social distancing and mask mandates be enforced on school campuses?
Yeah, sorry. Thank you, and thanks for that question. Reopening in the fall, I like saying we're welcoming back everyone because it's been a very long year, and we certainly know face-to-face education is powerful and is what really makes it gives our teachers motivation as well as our students. The education secretary has said for social distancing to keep the social distancing, but he would like to have the masks be not guaranteed. He doesn't want everybody to wear them. I don't believe that. I actually believe that we're going to have to look and see where we are as we're going to be opening to be able to make that decision. I understand that the Commissioner of Education wants that, but we have to do what's best for Broward County and what's best for our Broward County schools, families, and students.
Thank you so much. Next question is for Congressman Deutsch. What is your stance on gun law reform?
Well, thanks. And thanks again for the invitation. I have been committed to gun violence prevention since coming to Congress, but then after the tragedy at Stoneman Douglas, it became really personal for me. So we've been actively working really hard. I've been trying to, sorry about that, but trying to help lead the effort here in Washington to pass meaningful gun safety legislation. So we passed background checks in the House, universal background checks, so that everyone who buys a gun has to get a background check. That's in the Senate. The Senate needs to act, but we need to do a lot more. We have to pass legislation that I introduced to outlaw high capacity magazines that allow people to fire off 50 or 100 rounds at a time. We have to get weapons of war off our street. We have to give police, law enforcement, the ability to take guns away from people who pose a danger to themselves or others. We have to invest in our communities and violence prevention programs. There's so much we can do. This is a primary focus of what I do here. I care deeply about it. Our community cares deeply about it. We're trying to keep everyone, especially our young people, safe.
Thank you, Congressman. Commissioner Welch,
Sure.
What has been your greatest project as City Commissioner?
My greatest project, actually, we're involved in it right now. When I first came on board, we didn't have an education advisory board, and we do now, thank goodness. But to me, it was all about the connection between the schools, the students, and our city. And so I made it my business to try to go to as many SAC meetings as possible and know what was happening in the schools and bring it back to the rest of the commission. Finally, we were able to get the Education Advisory Board. And then as a result of that, this commission is so forward thinking, thank God for that. And we borrow from our neighbors, like this Teen Political Forum project. So I know I'm getting the cutoff, but I mean, it was really, we took it, you took it, and you made it your own. It's Coconut Creek's Teen Political Forum. It's not Coral Springs, even though that's where it started. Bravo to you.
Thank you. Similar question to you, Ms. Whitman. Are there any big projects that you're working on that you want students to know about?
We have a lot of projects that come through the planning department, and some of them are more exciting than others, but the one that I'm most excited about right now mostly has to do with elements along Hillsborough Boulevard. We won a $1 million grant from Broward County to do some work for the pathway along Hillsborough Boulevard and to remove an unused turn lane along Hillsborough Boulevard, and that's going through the planning process right now. As a part of that, there's also a new development called Vista Gardens, which is kind of a ballroom or party building that's going to be located along Hillsborough Boulevard. And then also Marketplace is going to be renovated, as well as 2 new out parcels, one of which is called Cali Coffee, and the other is a new retail portion building that's going to be on that same property, and new facade and new parking lot. All of that is going to have a 8 to 10 foot sidewalk that runs all the way from 441, generally all the way to just about to the end of where the new dog hotel play park is, which is exciting for us. And we're very excited about that. And it kind of speaks to our efforts to increase the mobility, the bicycle mobility and the pedestrian mobility in the city. So that's probably the biggest thing and most exciting thing we have right now.
Thank you. Next, Congressman Deutsch. What do you think is one of the most important pieces of climate change legislation being heard right now?
Well, there are a lot of things. The president's new proposal to establish clean energy standards is really important. And I've been working hard on legislation to put a price on carbon. If we're going to be able to seriously combat climate change, we need to change people's behavior, which means making the polluters pay for the carbon they put in the atmosphere. This is something that will have a dramatic impact, allow us to reduce carbon output and affect climate change. It's something that I've been working on for several years. And with this new administration, with President Biden in office, we're really hopeful. Just this morning, we had a chance to talk about it with the John Kerry, who's the new climate special envoy. And we think if you can make polluters pay, take all that money and give it back to consumers, we can make the planet greener and safer, and we can help out people who really could use a hand now as well.
Thank you so much, Congressman. The next question is for you as well. How is Congress planning on creating an immigration bill that can get enough support to pass?
Well, this is a really important issue for especially all of us in South Florida. In South Florida, we understand the important role that immigration plays. Our community is made up of immigrants. It's what makes our community so great. It's what makes our schools so great, and it's what we should celebrate. So we passed legislation in the House to create, to help our dreamers, to create a pathway to citizenship for our dreamers, for everyone who knows dreamers. This is the only country that dreamers recognize as their own. So we ought to treat them accordingly. But there's bigger legislation. There's bigger legislation that we introduced to help all undocumented immigrants. It is legislation that we're working with Democrats and Republicans on. The House and Senate were able to move forward together years ago. In fact, Senator Rubio led an effort on comprehensive immigration reform. We're trying to get him to realize that it's better to come back and work with us to respect immigrants, to pave a way to citizenship for our undocumented immigrants, and to make sure that our country continues to be one that celebrates the contributions that immigrants make. And passing comprehensive immigration reform is a huge step toward accomplishing that.
Thank you. Next up is a question for Dr. Smith. What would you tell those who are hesitant to get vaccinated, especially now that distribution of the J&J vaccine has been paused?
Well, thank you for the question. As a member of the COVID-19 task force for T. Leroy Jefferson Medical Society, I've been a strong proponent for people to get vaccinated. It is something that we recognize as an issue with vaccine hesitancy. And so we waged our own campaign to try to encourage members of our community to get their vaccination by hosting different forums, information forums to address questions that people have about vaccines, to dispel some of the myths about vaccines. Even with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine being paused right now, everyone should continue to get their vaccinations. The Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines are still very effective. And I believe that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine will also come back online based upon some particular guidelines. The reason for it being paused is based on some very isolated incidents, some very rare forms of blood clots, which represent about 1/1000th of a percent. So I hope that everyone will be encouraged to get the vaccine as soon as possible. It is the only way we will get this pandemic under control and that we can return to some sense of normalcy.
Thank you so much, Dr. Smith. Now we have our last question, pre-submitted question for Congressman Deutsch, because we know he has to leave soon. So the question is, if Congress passes an infrastructure bill, how will it affect the residents of Coconut Creek and South Florida?
Well, thanks, and thanks for letting me get in, and to all of the other panelists. Chief Arnold, especially you are just sitting there so patiently. I apologize for taking all these questions, but I'm going to get out of your way soon, and then you're going to have the floor over yourself. Look, the infrastructure plan you asked about, right, Joaquin?
Yes.
Okay, so the jobs plan is really important, and I had a chance to talk to Secretary Buttigieg about this just last week. Everything that the jobs plan wants to do, that the infrastructure bill wants to do, is front and center in South Florida and in Coconut Creek. It's the issues that we all deal with, whether it's resiliency and building up to protect our community against hurricanes, dealing with the climate change issues like sea level rise. We're investing in roads and road repairs. We're investing in building out infrastructure for broadband. The bill invests in bridges and tunnels, something that in Broward County especially are really important right now. And we're doing all of this, not just making these investments to help fix things that need to be fixed, but we're making these investments to create high-paying jobs and to put us in a position to be able to compete with countries all around the world in the economy. We have, and I'll just finish with this, in Coconut Creek and in Broward County, we have a really unique opportunity to be a leader, not just in South Florida, given where we sit right in between Miami and West Palm Beach, to really be the focal point of South Florida. But this is where all the action is. People want to be in South Florida. They want to be in Coconut Creek. They want to come down here and live and start their businesses. We need to make the kinds of investments to help those grow and to create good jobs while we're doing it. That's what the jobs plan is going to do. And hopefully Secretary Buttigieg will have an opportunity to come down to South Florida, hopefully Coconut Creek, we'll see, to be able to talk about all of this with our residents. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you, and send my regards to Coconut Creek, and I cannot wait to get back home and to see everybody in person as soon as we can. So thanks.
Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
And now our next question is for Supervisor of Elections, Scott. What are some changes you plan to make as the new Supervisor of Elections?
So one of the big goals that I have is to basically make it easier to navigate our system and to vote. And I also want to raise people's confidence in our vote by mail system. So we've already put in place a new system that will make it easier for us to communicate with people. We're going to use text message, email, and robocalls to let people know when their vote by mail ballot has been sent out. We're going to give people reminders to send their ballots back, and also let them know that it's been received and that it's been counted. This system is already in place, and it'll be used as early as the anticipated special election that may come up this fall. So additionally to that, we are basically planning to make it easier for people to find their precincts to vote on Election Day. And we are actually in the middle of a project with Google where we're actually going to put a system in place that's going to make it far easier. When you go on our website, you'll be able to go through our website or text us or call and quickly find out where your precinct is simply by giving your name and date of birth. So we're putting a lot of new projects in place. There's a few more, but I know my time's going to run out on me. But we have a number of projects in place to make it basically to try to drive up our voter turnout by making it easier for people to find us.
Thank you. Our next question is for Chief Arnold. We know we have had all of you guys waiting because of Congressman Deutsch had to go, but now we will proceed just as we planned. So, Police Chief, there is a training available for police officers to educate them on how to better deal with situations in which someone is having a mental health crisis, known as crisis intervention training. How is the police department of Coconut Creek encouraging officers to have this training and making it available for them?
Great question, Joaquin, and thank you for asking it. The first part of the question is, we don't recommend our officers get it, or we don't try to prompt them to get it. We mandate it. We are one of the first agencies in the county 2 years ago that required crisis intervention training for every single one of our sworn police officers. And that's the entire course. It's not cheap, but over the last couple of years, we have phased it into all of our employees, so they have all received it. And it's extremely important. And I'd be willing to bet you we're in one of a handful of agencies in South Florida that mandates it for all of our sworn personnel.
Thank you so much. So, Mr. Watkins, what are some solid steps that Broward County Public School has taken to address racial disparities among students?
So some of the things that our district has done is created opportunities for our students to have voice. So the board approved for our district to have to scale our mentoring programs, in which we are allowing our mentoring programs to embed much of the work that we're doing in our district, such as our Young Voices Matter student forums, which gives our kids the opportunity to speak about issues of social justice, racial equity, diversity, and inclusion. We've also instituted what's called our Racial Equity Institutes. So students have the opportunity to learn about the historical and structural conditions around the racial history. And we've also done an initiative for our students around involving them in the voting process, the legislative process, where our students have the opportunity to go to Tallahassee and lobby for legislation that will improve the conditions around racial equity and around diversity for our student populations.
Thank you. School Board Member Rupert, schools cannot hire based off of race. Knowing this, how is the school board approaching diversity among faculty and staff?
Wow, I'll answer a little bit, and then I'm going to call for an assist with Mr. Watkins. But I would say that the process, by the time it gets to the school board, is mostly worked out. But what we have done in hiring contractors, we had a disparity study and found out that we were not giving a correct percentage of our business, which we are the largest business in Broward County, largest employer in Broward County with 30,000 people that work for us. A lot of business, almost it's over $3 billion that we do for that we put out in the school board. And most people don't get that. So it's huge. If you have any groups that are getting a disparity, so it's our Small Minority Business Association, our women business and entities and vendors, they were not getting the percentage that they should have been. So we have taken that as a policy for the school board to make that right when it comes to hiring vendors. And Mr. Watkins, I'm going to ask when it comes to the employee to hire employees instead of the vendor process, if you could chime in.
So we have a division called Human Resources and Equity. And the goal is to ensure that we have representation in our school system. But more than that, the board has approved for the district to scale professional learning for our educators in racial equity, diversity, and inclusion trainings. We do it as part of the new teacher academies. We do it as part of the orientations for all of our district staff around training for racial equity and diversity in general.
Thank you. Now a question for Commissioner Welch. How can a city like Coconut Creek have any impact on the climate or environment? Don't most actions happen at the federal, state, or county level?
Can you say that again, Joaquin?
Yes.
The city's impact on environmental issues?
Yes, exactly. So how can a city
Okay.
like Coconut Creek have an impact?
Okay, well, I think one that is very timely is our approach now to regionalizing waste and recycling in the county. You know, we all know the recycle debacle with the world market, et cetera, and then our contamination by our residents and our recycling. So for the past year and a half, and we are stewards of the environment. We are very forward thinking as far as the environment. So this really falls in line with it, to be a part of the 31 cities in Broward County and the county itself, to look, you can't just look at recycle, you have to look at waste, because how we deal with it 50 years from now, when you and your children are here, we want to leave it in a better footprint, especially here in the county. So we want to put the landfills out of business. We want to turn our garbage into renewable energy by burning it in the waste to energy plants like Wheelabrator technology. And the items that truly can be recycled, we own a piece of property over very near here that could be a recycle facility, and we could control our own destiny of what recycle. For instance, we could crush our glass. I'm sorry, I have to finish. Crush our glass, build sidewalks, build roads, maybe possible beach renourishment, and turn plastics rather than singling them out as saying, you know, we're not going to ever eliminate them, but turn them into products. So we could really have an opportunity to control our destiny and our future's destiny. So I'm really, really proud of that. And that is a huge impact that we can do right here, right now, together. Bye.
Thank you for that answer. Now let's hear from Ms. Whitman. What kind of eco-friendly initiatives have been implemented within the city of Coconut Creek?
We have something called a green plan, and if you haven't had an opportunity to take a look at that, you can certainly shoot me an email and I can send it to you, but it tracks a number of factors within the city, CO2 emissions, how the city operates in general, how we provide elements of environmental matters for our community. It's enormous and it's got a lot of data in it, and sometimes it's a little overwhelming. So that is probably the most nitty-gritty thing that you could take a look at to see how we're moving forward. The things that you could see that you might not see every day is the interaction that we have between the other municipalities in Broward County and in the region and with Broward County itself. We have a very good relationship with all of them, and we work together with them on a regular basis, and we support each other in our efforts, mostly so that we're not reinventing the wheel every time. We also work very highly to make sure that we're all on the same page and working forward in the same manner. So I would suggest that if you have a lot of questions about that, anybody that wants to can get in touch with me, because it's an enormous amount of information. It's hard to do it in a minute. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now a quick fire question for three of our panelists, School Board Member Rupert, Mr. Watkins, and Dr. Smith. What is your favorite musical or play? First, Ms. Rupert.
Hands down is Hamilton. Loved it, loved it, loved it.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Watkins.
My favorite play was Little Abner, because I was in it.
Now,
Favorite play.
Now, Dr. Smith.
Sorry, I gotta mute you.
This is a random question. I guess it would be Phantom of the Opera.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Now to Supervisor of Elections, Scott. What is your office doing to encourage voting among teenagers?
Great question. So we are having our high school voter registration drive, which is April 21st through April 30th, just so happens to start tomorrow. And I'm very excited about that. This is an annual event, but we are trying to take this to a new level. We'd really love for the teenagers of Broward County to start thinking of 16 as a rite of passage, not only because you can drive, but because you can go ahead and get registered to vote. Although you can't vote until you're 18, you can feel like you're that much closer to adulthood by getting that voter registration completed right away. So that's one thing we're doing to reach out to high schoolers. And as well as we are planning an initiative this fall with the local college campuses as well, where we would like to get out there and try to promote the same type of registration and urging people to get registered to vote on college campuses as well.
Thank you. And Mr. Watkins, I see you're raising your hand. Is there anything you would like to add?
Yes, I would just like to add that the board has been very proactive in not only helping the children register to vote, but also actually getting them to the polls. And so we have been able to get the kids to the polls, whether it be through bus or arranging for polling sites through early voting for kids to go and participate in their in the process of actually casting their ballot. And that's really exciting to see.
Thank you for sharing that. So next up, Dr. Smith, we have a question for you. As a graduate of Florida A&M University, what would you say was the best part about attending a historically Black university, also known as an HBCU? What would you say to students who are considering attending one?
Well, there's a lot to be said. I don't have time for it to say it all, but attending an HBCU for an African American, I think it is a life-changing experience. Personally, growing up in a predominantly white city, I wanted to learn more about my culture and about my community. And attending Florida A&M University is still the best decision I've ever made in my life. I learned a great deal about myself, about my community, and it instilled a strong sense of identity that allowed me to go on to do the things that I've done thus far and hope to do in the future. And it gave me a great sense of community service. So, and that's why I continue to do what I do today. And I still maintain a great relationship with all my mentors, which is why I do a great deal of mentoring myself. And so, but I can also address, I noticed there were a number of questions about COVID-19, and I've been doing that kind of stuff for most of this year, addressing those questions. So I can address any of those questions as well.
Thank you. Now let's continue with our next question, which is for Chief Arnold. The Black Lives Matter movement has brought awareness to the widespread mistrust between communities of color and the police. What is the police department of Coconut Creek doing to earn the trust of its community members?
We're doing a number of things. We, first of all, on a personal note, I've been elected by the Broward Chiefs of Police Association to sit on as their representative on our new county police and criminal justice oversight board. We also have a robust Unity in the Community program in which we all work together to build ways to unite our community and to do outreach and to educate our officers and interact with our officers. And this was has come into play over the last year. We also are working with Sheriff Tony to do quite a bit of implicit bias training, de-escalation training, and most importantly, and I'm very proud of this, we're an accredited agency and coming up for our first reaccreditation in just a few months, in which any citizen can speak out about their police department. And we're very proud of that. And that's the highest standards that you can obtain.
Thank you. Next, for School Board Member Rupert. How is the school board planning on mending the educational deficiencies caused by the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, we're not waiting to start it. We've already started over spring break. We've certainly found through our local testing which kids need the extra help, which have had the COVID slide, which we used to all understand what the summer slide is. Unfortunately, we have a COVID slide, which is long lasting. Instead of having a 10, 20, 30, 40 schools open for summer school, I believe there's going to be 85, which is what we were discussing today at the school board. That's a lot of schools. We'll have face-to-face. These kids will be able to really catch up as they possibly can and look forward to the fall so they can get on the floor and hit it running, because as you all know, it's incredibly hard to make up time. I mean, when I was a reading teacher, I had kids in 9th grade come to me at 3rd grade reading level, and I had 1 year to get them way past 3rd grade into 9th or 10th grade. So it's tough to remediate. So we started early and we're continuing that. And I'm very excited. We have a lot of our teachers have signed up, and the help is going to be there. So I'm very hopeful.
Thank you so much. Now let's get back to Commissioner Welch. This is a very common question. How has the recycling program for the city of Coconut Creek changed? How can students learn to properly recycle items?
Okay, another great question, because you know I love to talk trash and recycling. Unfortunately, we like other communities had to put our recycling on pause because, as I mentioned before, our curbside recycling items that were going into the bin were to the tune of about 40% contamination, which meant 40% of all of the items citywide were ending up in a landfill. They were not being recycled. So that was also about $250,000 in a year that extra transporting of those items. And the worst part was that it was going to landfills. Coconut Creek we haven't landfilled our garbage in years. We've sent our stinky garbage to be burned and turned into renewable energy. As I said, it can renew and energize 30 to 40,000 homes in the course of a year. So we had to put it on pause until, as I mentioned, this regional work study group that's been working so diligently to get the governing structure and the funding, and most of all 31 cities on board so that we can conquer this together. Because before we were all on our own, and this will make us all recycle in a better way. And students, you teach your parents, because you're going to teach them, whether we can or not at the city level, you will. So I really trust and have my great faith in your doing a way better job than we have.
Thank you for that answer. Ms. Whitman, next question is for you. From your perspective, what do you expect for the future of Coconut Creek when it comes to being more environmentally friendly?
What I believe is, if you look at the information that's out there, the biggest hurdle that we have to overcome is CO2 emissions. That's really the biggest problem we have. So I believe that we've already started in a big way trying to have more pedestrian access, more bicycling availability in the city, safe bicycling routes, pathways and such. We're actively putting in EV chargers, trying to build up that in the city so that as people start to buy electric cars, they have the infrastructure to make sure it works perfectly for them. So I think that those are the directions that we're going to continue to go down. And I think that, again, working with the county and at a regional level, we're able to pull our resources to push us even further forward than we already are. For a small city, we're continuously asked by the county and by other municipalities to share with them the things that we've done already. So we're ahead of the game a little bit, and not that we can stop what we're doing, but every year we try to do something new. And I think that the support we get from the residents and from our commissioners is commendable, because if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't be able to move forward. But it's a priority for all of us, and it's a priority for them. And so I think we're just going to continue to just do a better job of what we're doing.
Thanks. Now, Mr. Watkins, who should students speak to if they see inequality or blatant discrimination from students and staff at school?
I would have, they should start with their equity liaison. Every school has a person who's been uniquely trained in areas such as courageous conversations about race, diversity, equity, resources around LGBTQ, all of our mandates around inclusion, such as Holocaust education, women's studies, Hispanic heritage, African American studies, and so many other components that they've been trained uniquely. And so wherever they can identify areas of need, they should reach out to those equity liaisons who work with school staff as well as students, come up with programs and activities to support their schools, and also to address through an equity plan initiatives that can improve the gaps within our schools and our school system.
Great, thank you. Next, Supervisor of Elections Scott. The Florida Senate is considering a bill that would change voting rules in the state. What effect would this have in the county?
Yeah, so the biggest problem right now with the bills that are moving through both the House and the Senate is that they're going to make it much more difficult for people to vote using a drop box. Now, this is very important because 1.5 million people across the state of Florida decided to vote by drop box. People in Florida prefer drop boxes because we don't have a deadline to what they call a postmark deadline that they have in other states. So some people don't feel comfortable putting their ballot in the mail because if the ballot doesn't reach the supervisor of elections by 7 p.m. on election night, then their vote won't be counted. So it's really important that we keep all the options open and allow everybody to vote the way that they feel most comfortable. Making it more difficult for people to use a drop box really is not addressing any type of known problem. We don't have any cases that were ever shown where there was any kind of fraud. It's also important to note that we treat Dropbox ballots that come through the Dropbox are verified the same way as a ballot that comes through the mail. So there's really no reason to not trust a ballot that goes through the Dropbox. Those ballots are verified using signature verification technology, the same signature verification technology that we use for the ballots that we get in the mail. So it's, if I had one message and if I could tell you guys one thing, is to please reach out to your legislators and let them know that they should not make it more difficult to vote. We should be working on finding ways to expand voting opportunities for more people in the community and not trying to find ways to make it more difficult. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next question is for Dr. Smith. Pfizer has recently asked the FDA to have their vaccine be authorized for the use of adolescents ages 12 to 15. How much do you think this will help in keeping schools safe?
Well, it's gonna help tremendously. I'm in fact, I just told some family members and other friends when Pfizer released that information that now the vaccine is 100% effective in kids 12 to 15. Before it was only for those 16 and above, but now that Pfizer has released that information, that we need to move with absolute expediency to get all of our kids vaccinated, and that's going to address the issue of being able to come back to school safely. I am not a supporter of bringing children back into the school system that have not been vaccinated, because the opportunity to spread the virus or to spread another variant of the virus just goes up as if that decision is made. I hope that we get this thing right. All kids should be vaccinated before they return to school, no different than we vaccinate students for measles, mumps, and rubella. And if a student comes to school who's sick with the flu, the school system will send them home. So it is the same situation. This is science, not politics.
We appreciate your answer. Now, Chief Arnold, a question for you. What is the role of school resource officers in school?
First and foremost, to build bonds with the students. Certainly to keep the school safe and provide a layer of protection at the school. But I think you know that our philosophy is if there's a problem at the school or if there's a criminal justice problem, we really don't want our school resource officers to be the first one to take enforcement action. The preference is for the school resource officer to be the go-to person to talk to contact, to be trusted, and to kind of be a confidant. But they certainly are there for protection as well, and of course to educate. They deliver DARE programs. They teach various classes at all of our schools. And I have to be quite honest with you, in Coconut Creek, amongst all of our principals and schools, our school resource officers are very popular. And I get constant good comments about them.
Thank you so much. And I know the supervisor of elections has to leave soon. So thank you for coming. And if you want to say anything before you go, you can go ahead right now.
Yes, just as I mentioned to the panelists, I actually have a meeting from 7 to 7:30, but I told them I'd be more than happy to come back if there were more questions. I'll check back in with you all in half an hour. But thanks for having me on for the time that I've been on so far. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, a question for Mr. Watkins is very related to the previous one. What kind of role should school resource officers or SROs have within schools? What would you recommend any change?
So one of the things that's important to note is that in our agreements with law enforcement, we see that our SROs are not used as disciplinarians, but they're actually to be resources for students and their communities. So the role of that SRO is to provide guidance and resources to the students, mentor students at school, establish positive relationships with the students. They're community resource officers. And so what we want to make sure that they're not doing is being used to participate in routine school-based discipline at the school, but really serve as an extension of our community. And so that students can begin to build trust with our SROs, and that will extend hopefully into the community at large.
Thank you. This question is for Commissioner Welch. Tell us a bit about the event hosted called Unity in the Community. Can we expect more events like this in the future?
Well, actually, the same platform that is providing the resources tonight, Broward College and Dr. Garcia are the ones that assisted us and last year, very timely that we should be talking about this because it was after George Floyd's death that our commission voted to host a forum like this to connect with the community and to talk about any social justice issues or equity overall in our community, and then tell them about the things that we proactively have done in our police department and as well as our other areas of our department. And since then, many of the takeaways we talked about, we discovered the history of civil rights in Broward County and Coconut Creek itself. We talked about the disparities in breaking down barriers in education as well as employment and community involvement and how better to do that. So we've gone out and done a number of things afterwards. There's one thing that's still missing, but some great things that we've done is cultural events and presentations for adults, as well as many programs for children to learn cultures, traditions, foods. You know, everybody wants to know about different kinds of foods. But the piece that we're missing, and I hope that we can get to that, is the small, intimate, personal one-on-one conversations amongst ourselves so we can listen and learn, and how all those differences aren't quite so different, and educate ourselves about one another, because we're a very diverse community and we want to make sure that it is in an equitable way. I'm very proud of our community for making it forward and everyone treating it so respectfully. And but we want to do more. There's always more.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. Chief Aaron, oh my God, Chief Arnold, what is your stance on stop and frisk?
Well, you know, the unfortunate thing about stop and frisk is on a national basis, I think most people view stop and frisk, that issue, as police who simply go around shaking people down, stopping them and frisking them and doing investigative stops. That is not what stop and frisk is. Stop and frisk is the basis of everything we do as police officers. A police officer needs reasonable suspicion to do an investigative stop, and they need probable cause to do a weapon pat down for a search. And people don't really understand it. And I'll be quite honest with you. I think for our next Unity in the Community event, we need a little presentation on stop and frisk to educate people on exactly what it is. If stop and frisk were taken away from law enforcement as a tool, we would not be able to do our jobs out on the street. And remember, and I say this all the time, number one objective for us, protect the innocent and provide security for our community. Number two, and more important, protect the constitutional rights of the people in our community. That's number two. Stop and frisk is essential to do both.
Thank you. Next, School Board Member Rupert. Will it be a requirement for students to get the COVID-19 vaccine in order to go to school next year? Or if not, how will it be encouraged for students to receive it?
The board actually hasn't had a conversation about that yet, but I would assume, I mean, I'm very pro that everybody gets the vaccination. As soon as my group was allowed to, I was right out there getting it. The way we are with other vaccinations, you certainly have an opt-out. In America, we accept that. If you have a religious reason, you can get a waiver. But I think every person in this country that is not medically harmful for you, you should get that. It is our civic right, and it's a way to get us back to school and moving forward. So I know as we get a little closer, when the superintendent actually announced that we were going back in the fall full time, that hadn't been discussed fully with the board, and the idea of vaccinations and masks hadn't been gelled out yet. But I'm a mask girl and a vaccine girl any day of the week, because I want to make sure that we're safe, our employees are safe, our students are safe, but I also want to make sure that they're back to school and they're learning. So from your board member, I'm saying yes on vaccines, and yes on going back to school, and yes, wearing masks.
Thank you. Now a question for Commissioner Welch. How is the city working to improve transportation?
Well, I'm so glad you asked that question. We not only have 1, 2, but we have 3 community buses to get our residents and students in and around town. And not only that, but to connect with the county's public bus transportation system, so that all ages have the ability. And might I say, it's a pretty high-end bus. I rode on the new one that we just got wrapped, and it is it's pretty cushy, and it's got great Wi-Fi. One of our trolleys is set up like a butterfly trolley, and all it does is run up and down Lyons Road all day, 6 days a week. So I think but you know, there's always improvement. So, I mean, we want to continue to look at, are we really, we always look at our routes. Are we serving, because I ride the routes. Are we serving the community? Could we take them in a little better way? Because originally we found out that some of our community buses were actually going to neighboring cities, to some of their businesses more than ours. And we wouldn't really be true to ourselves and shopping local and supporting our own small businesses. Not that we don't want to support others, but you know, we really want to keep as much cash in the creek as we can, and then still service a lot of students use our community buses, and I'm glad that they're not you know, crummy looking buses. They're really nice, painted, and they look great. So I hope anybody would be proud to get on one. Bye.
Thank you. Our next question is for Dr. Smith. Experts like Dr. Anthony Fauci and Dr. Rochelle Walensky have warned about the spread of COVID-19 between students and youth sports. What should students who are still participating in team sports do to stay safe?
Well, the first thing is to be vaccinated. I don't really understand why this concept for Americans is so difficult. I think because Americans are just spoiled by nature. Americans like to have what they want, when they want it, the way they want it. And it's hard for some people to adhere to rules that are not, rules that they may not be, I think they just have a hard time dealing with rules that they feel like infringe upon their rights. Unfortunately, a virus just doesn't care about your rights. That's the problem. The virus doesn't care about your rights. It doesn't care about your religion. It doesn't care about your political persuasion. It doesn't care about your age. It doesn't care about your money. It doesn't care about anything but getting inside your body and replicating to cause disease. The virus, its job is to survive. That's why they mutate, to survive. And if they get inside your body and the environment is not good enough, they will start to change or mutate to better handle the environment. So if you want to get back to team sports, if you want to get back to in-person school, if you want to get back to normalcy, you got to get vaccinated as soon as possible, because vaccination takes time. It takes several weeks between doses, okay? So it's not like regular medication where you can just pop a pill and you will be better tomorrow. That's not how vaccinations work. So I can give more presentations on this for those who are interested. But if you want to get back to it, get vaccinated.
Thank you. Before the final question in this section, I want to remind students to submit their questions for panelists. Once intermission begins, your submissions will no longer be considered since our team needs time to prepare for the Q&A section. Now, our last pre-selected question of the night for Ms. Whitman. What is the educational and professional pathway for students interested in city planning?
Well, it can come from a variety of sources. For instance, I have a degree in landscape architecture. I ended up working mostly in planning and zoning along the way rather than landscape architecture, and also in environmental management, and just found my way further and further into the planning process. We have, of our planners that we have, I think one has a public administration degree, but she's been working at the city forever. So she's learned through the process. And then we have several that went through the planning school at FSU. And then we have another one that was in the development industry just forever, and she just worked her way through. So there are several ways that you can become a planner. It just depends on the amount of time, exactly what you want to do with it, and how far you want to go with it. But if anybody has any further questions on that, you can always reach out to me, and I'd be happy to speak with you about it.
Thank you. Wow, we sure learned a lot, but it's not over yet. We're going to take a short 5-minute break and then hear from a special guest, and then we will have 2 other students begin our Q&A portion.
Students, this is the time for you to stretch, grab a snack, and text a friend to make sure they are at TPF. They still have time to join.
This is also your time to take a selfie with the screen that will be shared momentarily so that you can prove to your teachers that you attended Teen Political Forum.
We will have 5 minutes, a 5-minute timer starting now. See you all in a few minutes.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed your break. Now we have the pleasure of hearing from the Broward College North Campus President and Vice Provost of Academic Services, Dr. Sunim Beaton Garcia.
Thank you, Haley, and good evening to everyone. Wow, panelists, you guys are amazing. Such succinct answers to some very involved questions. Broward College is so honored to be a part of this year's Teen Political Summit and to have our amazing College Academy students be amongst those that are participating in this remarkable event. I want to thank you, the students that are here tonight, because you could have chosen to be anywhere else. But tonight, your presence here and your active participation demonstrates to us your commitment to your community and that you want to learn more about the issues that matter to you. I hope that you realize that each of you have an important platform to contribute and to elevate our communities. Some often associate leadership with only those who could hold a certain title or position or an office. And while that can be true, it doesn't mean that you have to wait until you achieve all of your goals before you try to affect change and have an impact. As a matter of fact, many great leaders began their work at the grassroots level, right? And by inspiring those around them, by using the available resources they have to make a difference in their communities. I want you to know that throughout our nation's history, young people have been instrumental in changing the world. For example, in the 60s and the civil rights reform, that was largely carried out by young activists of their time. And in most recent years, our youth have been leading things and reforms around the LGBT community, climate change, gun violence, and more globally, we can think of Malala Yousafzai, who stood up for the rights of education for girls, right? So you can see that we have some pretty big problems to solve, but we need courageous leaders like yourselves to shape the solutions. And so leadership starts with our everyday actions and our interactions. So don't be afraid to ask questions like you're doing today. Get involved, tackle the things that you know we must change for a more just society. And Haley challenged me today to put in a Hamilton quote, so don't throw away your shot, okay? That's my Hamilton quote. We are extremely fortunate to have a democracy that allows for healthy discourse and exchange of ideas. And your voices are being heard today and could have a significant impact on those that make decisions. Our elected officials and panelists are here to educate us on the inner workings of government, health, and so many other areas. They're here to listen to your questions, to answer them, and we're so appreciative of their time and their energy and their service to the community and for making this possible. So thank you. And so if you'd like to have these kinds of discussions and want to have more opportunities to learn outside the classroom, we have something called the Village Square. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but it's a chance for students to engage in political discussions for students and by students. It's open, it's free, and it's a safe space for civic engagement. So if you want to learn more, I can certainly get that to you, but I want to thank you all for allowing me to be a part of this event. I've been sitting here quietly listening and soaking in all of your questions and the wonderful answers that you've received, and just so very pleased to be here. And in closing, I want to thank the steering committee's leadership on this incredible event. And I'm very thankful also to Dr. Todd Bernhardt from our team that supported our students this year. And of course, our fantastic IT team, right? So thank you all, and let's continue with the wonderful questions. And now I cede the floor to Emily. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Remember me from the beginning of TPF? Well, I am back. For those who forgot, my name is Emily. I'm a senior at College Academy.
And I'm Alina from Atlantic Technical High School. We are so excited to be asking your questions tonight.
Panelists, same rules apply for this section, meaning you will only have 1 minute to reply. Okay. So the first question is for School Board Representative Rupert. This is from the live Q&A. If students don't want to return to school, will there be an option to stay home?
I would hope so. I know we have Broward Virtual, but a lot of that detail really isn't worked out yet. I know as a school board member, it's what I will be pushing for, because I believe that a student's right to decide to have their education continue either as a hybrid or online should be honored as well. So it is something as your school board member that I will be discussing with the superintendent and definitely getting the answers out when I talk to my colleagues and we make a formal policy about that. We just haven't gotten there yet. The superintendent wanted to make sure that everyone knew that we were pushing to go back to face, and that he didn't believe that we were going to be allowed to do the hybrid version. But it's something that I'm certainly going to push for, because I've been hearing from students that they still want that option. So.
Thank you for your answer. The next question is for Ms. Whitman. Does Coconut Creek have any plans in place currently to deal with the threat of rising sea levels? Is this a factor being considered in local or regional planning?
So Coconut Creek, again, we reach out to the county and we support the county's efforts. The likelihood of what we're going to see in the not too distant future might be some infiltration, salt infiltration into our water system. So we are actively taking a look at that and getting prepared for that. But we also recognize that the communities on the coast are going to be seeing sea level rise at a rate higher than we will see it. And I think that what we're going to end up having to deal with is more of a social issue rather than an environmental issue, although sometimes the two do overlap. So we're going to be probably seeing more people moving further inward into the state, which would mean coming over to Coconut Creek.
Thank you so much. Okay, the next question will be for Chief Arnold. What were the first months of adjusting to law enforcement during COVID-19 like? Are there any skills or lessons you've learned while policing during the pandemic that you think you'll integrate into your policing work for the rest of your career?
I'm certainly speaking for my officers myself. I'll tell you one thing. I've learned a lot about virtual communication that I never knew before this whole outbreak, and we've learned to use it a lot more effectively. For the officers on the street, it's been difficult. We've tried to minimize contacts with the public. For instance, we had during the toughest days, we would tell our officers, don't enter someone's home unless you have to for public safety reason. Ask them to step outside. Many people don't want to do that. Try to limit your number of traffic stops. Or try to keep a distance keep a distance from people, all in an effort to keep our officers safe and keep the public safe. And I think they've learned a lot about it. I do think community policing has been helped to some degree because officers have been seen in a little bit of a different role. People have been leaning on them with so many people home and not at work, and so many kids at home and not at school. There's been a lot more interaction with their police, I think, on a very positive basis. So there's a lot of lessons learned, and I can't wait until we get past this, do what Dr. Smith said, get our vaccines and get back into society, back into our jobs, and back out into public to see each other. I miss those faces. Virtual is fine, but I miss the faces.
Thank you so much for your answer. The next question is for Dr. Smith. How long does the COVID vaccine give immunization against the virus?
Well, right now, for what we know, that it gives protection for at least a year. That's what we know right now. I've said to friends and colleagues that there is a good chance that we may, and I stress may, actually have to get a third shot sometime in December, maybe in March for the 2 dose, and of course a second dose for the 1 dose when that comes back online. There's a chance of that, a booster shot necessary, just to make sure that the protection that our body's immune system has responded properly and gives us protection. If we do undergo a second booster shot, if they feel that's necessary, I believe we are. I'm very encouraged that we will have a lifetime immunity, and that this will not be something that we have to visit every year. So hopefully, we don't have to do that, and our bodies will be protected from the 2-dose vaccination.
Thank you so much for your answer, Dr. Smith. So the next question will be for Commissioner Welch, but before we do that, we have had Christine Hovchowski, State Representative for the Florida's 96th District, join us. Thank you so much. We promise we'll get a question to you very soon. Okay, for Commissioner Welch, most plastics can't be recycled, so will getting rid of landfills and using alternatives make a big enough impact to help our community environmentally?
Well, first of all, Representative Hunchowski, we're looking to you and others to take away the preemption from us on the plastics reduction. Other states or places that you may travel, and my husband and I have traveled and wanted to come back and initiate something similar in our own community, and we're unable to do so. I mean, we can do it on our own city property with our own city events and things like that where we can control it. But the best way to reduce plastics is just to do this. Carry refillable containers, and all of us in each one of these squares, plus all of our friends and all of our neighbors. I mean, what a thing that would be, and carry our own recyclable bags. I mean, there are laws that prevent us from imposing restrictions on it, but we can do our own in our own way, all of us, each one of us, in each one of our networks. So until we can get those laws changed and those preemptions overturned, let's just do it ourselves, one at a time.
Thank you so much for your answer, Commissioner Welch. The next question is for Mr. Watkins. What school initiatives are in place to address the social and emotional needs of Black males in the wake of so much violence against young Black men?
So that's a great question. We have a number of initiatives where we have found a place for advocacy for Black males and males in general, such as our Mentoring Tomorrow's Leaders organization, which was created as a male initiative around graduation rates, but it also allows for them to have a safe place to address a myriad of issues where we have guest speakers, we have programs that are designed to support their needs. We also have an organization called 5,000 Role Models of Excellence Project, which is a male mentoring initiative as well. And it does many of the similar things, but it is more of a civic organization that brings in a lot of stakeholders from outside of the community. But bigger than that, outside of the organizations, we've done a lot of initiatives as a district to give voice to kids through our partnerships with Zoe's Winter Groove. We've done some things with Know Your Rights with Colin Kaepernick. We've done conversations with law enforcement. Many of the agencies like Coconut Creek Police Department have spoken on panels with students to address some of those concerns. So there's been a number of things that we're doing on the front end to address it, as well as creating our trauma-informed care best practices and many other initiatives to support them. I see the red card. I'm rushing. I'm getting off.
No, you're fine. Thank you so much. That was a great answer, Mr. Watkins. Okay, Representative Hunchowski, your time to shine. Your first question. Last fall, Floridians voted to raise the minimum wage to $15. What does this mean for teenagers who work for minimum wage? Can students who work for $15 an hour already expect a pay increase?
First of all, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here. So the minimum wage passed, but it is staggered. So it's not going to completely go into effect right away. I believe the first bump up comes in September, and then there's actually a schedule for raising it so that the ultimate minimum wage will be $15.
Thank you for your answer, Representative Hunchowski, and thank you for joining us.
And I'm glad I didn't get a yellow or a red card.
No, you were very quick. Good job.
Okay, the next question is for Dr. Smith. If I've been vaccinated, do I need to wear a mask?
Absolutely. Yes, you do. The research is still out on the whether or not those who are vaccinated still are able to transmit the virus. That is still unclear. It's likely not, but it's still unclear. So even for those who are fully vaccinated, like I am, I still wear my mask when I'm outside of my home. Now, if you are in your home with people, with your family, and everyone is healthy, then no, of course. But if it's the moment you leave out of your home and you are around others, you are at risk. And so it is very important that we all continue to wear our mask. We continue to socially distance. We can see the light at the end of the tunnel in terms of getting on the other side of this pandemic, but it's still going to require for all of us to do what we need to do in terms of vaccination, wearing masks, and keeping our distance, and not participating in groups, congregated groups.
Thank you. Okay, back to School Representative Rupert. School Board Representative Rupert, my bad. As colleges and universities across the country move away from standardized testing, do you think it's possible that Florida universities could also become test optional? And what would that look like for high school students?
There we go. I would love it. I can tell you that. And are you saying that there wouldn't be any SAT, ACT? Is that what you're talking about? The ones that get you into college? Yes.
I believe that's what the question's about.
Okay. Well, we all know that you can't, when you test people, you can't get everything. I actually think that if an SAT and or an ACT, that we already have concordant scores that we utilize, but I would also like to see a portfolio to be part of that, to make it more, I guess, more well-rounded, because the student is much more than just numbers. And the anxiety for testing to get into those universities and state colleges is horrendous. And it's not just students, it's also for students that want to become teachers. I mean, most people don't understand that, but there's 4 parts that you need to pass from a test. It's called the general knowledge. And you could pass 1 or 2 or 3. You have to pass all 4 of them until you can continue even taking your classes to be in education. That's wrong. So we have high stakes testing even for our teachers to be able to continue their education. So I would like to see it more well-rounded, portfolio, and a lot more that would show who you really are. I saw the red card, sorry.
No, you're fine. Thank you so much for your answer. Okay, so the next question is for Dr. Smith. Is the coronavirus vaccine going to become an annual shot similar to the flu vaccine?
Well, I kind of addressed this earlier. We don't anticipate that to be the case. As I said, that there may be there is a chance that we may have to take a booster shot later on in the winter, around Christmas or shortly after the New Year. But we certainly hope that it will not. It's not looking that way. The protection that the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines provide right now really show a very deep reaction of our immune system and show a very extended protection. So but there is a chance we may have to get a booster. But if that is the case, I don't expect that we will have to revisit getting another shot for COVID-19. I think we'll have a lifetime protection.
Okay, thank you. Next question is for Representative Hunchofsky. There's been lots of concerns among teenagers about the standing of Bright Futures with the bill just being passed in the Senate. What should students know about this piece of legislation?
That it's terrible, that it's breaking a promise that was made. I am incredibly against this bill, and the fact that it's actually being brought up now in this time when there is such insecurity and unemployment and all the economic issues that people are facing these days. It's really it's hurtful to even be talking about it. Right now they have, I have to say, though, the one thing that I think I want everybody to take away from the Senate Bill 86 that's now going to apparently work its way to the House, it is now a very different version of the bill than it originally was. And that is only because of student and resident advocacy. We have been inundated with emails and phone calls, and not only us, but more importantly, the people who were sponsoring the bill caused them to reflect. It's still not a good bill. The promise was with the lottery that it would fund the bright futures. People are relying on those 100% and 75% funding in order to be able to afford to go to college, and it should not change. So keep writing to your legislators.
Thank you, Representative Panchovsky. The next question is for Ms. Whitman. How transparent is the city when it comes to construction projects?
That's a good question. We are incredibly transparent. The information is always available through public request, public information. It's open. Depending on the project, there's advertisements. The meetings at the Planning and Zoning Board and the Commission are always open to the public. If it's something like a rezoning, there are requirements that we notify people within 500 feet of the project. So there's a lot of opportunity for people to get involved. And I think the thing that we hear the most is, oh, I didn't know about this, but there's a lot of opportunity. And if you go to our website, there are, our GIS does map and track ongoing projects. And you can always just call the planning department, and we're happy to help or answer any questions you have there too. But it's very transparent at this point.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The next question is for School Board Representative Rupert. School lunch is supposed to be healthy, fresh, and provide students for their nutritional needs, but that's not what it does. Many students don't eat during school hours because of its low quality. So why isn't it changing? And why do school boards brush off the USDA's low quality provisions for food?
Well, I can't disagree with you on the taste, but it's gotten better. I can tell you once a year, or we have elementary, middle, high school kids to come by and check out some new food that we're looking at adding into the system for next year, and they get to do a thumbs up or a thumbs down on it. So there is some input from them. It's I would say it's minimally meets the recommendations. You know, I hear from kids that they most like when they can take their they get a grab and go for their family and grab and go for over the weekend, that they prefer that food than actually eating in the cafeteria at the school. So I will bring that back to our wonderful Mary Mulder, who's in charge of our food and nutrition, and she's amazing. They have their own budget, and so I will once again talk to her about this and see what we can do. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. The next question is for Mr. Watkins. What are some steps that have been taken by the Equity and Diversity Department to prevent discrimination against the LGBTQ+ community?
So there are a number of initiatives that we do, but the first and most important is that our board has passed one of the most comprehensive critical support guides for LGBTQ students in the country. And so we have not only our LGBTQ critical support guide that provides guidance and support to teachers and staff and students on how we engage and provide safety and belonging for our LGBTQ+ community. We also have our transgender guidelines, which really call out and how we protect and keep our transgender students safe, and also giving them a feeling of community and of belonging. We also have our GSA, which are our Gay Straight Alliance organizations that work together with our schools and with our students to provide voice for them as well.
Thank you. That was a great answer. Okay, next up for Commissioner Welch. You mentioned, or sorry, you talked about the Unity in the Community event that Coconut Creek hosted a little bit prior in the event. How would someone join one of those events?
They were conducted just like your forum here tonight. Q&As, we did polls. We posed a number of questions out to the community about their sense of feeling right then about our diversity, our police department, our programs that we had going at that time. So that was part of the ability that we had to take the feedback about what residents suggested that they would like to see more of, and brought form the programs that I talked about earlier, both for the adult sector as well as for the PART programs for the toddlers all the way up to the young students. So, but we still want to do more.
Thank you, Commissioner Welch. The next question is for School Board Representative Rupert. Once students return back to school, would school transportation, for example, buses, follow COVID-19 safety guidelines?
That is the plan. We follow the CDC guidelines. So we've been, I know, buying buses, we do leasing for buses. It's very easy now to meet school class size and to be able to do it on the buses. It's going to require a lot more planning and to make sure that we have the resources on all the buses that we need, and to see exactly how many kids will be coming back into our system, because there's about a little under 10,000 students that at this point are not part of Broward schools anymore. And we need to make sure we can get them back, because we also lose funding, and we cannot be able to afford teachers, buses, all the services that we have if we don't have the number of kids, because it's set upon as to how many kids are there for that moment. So the numbers will tell us what we need to do.
Thank you, School Board Representative Rupert. That was great. So the next question is directed for you, Chief Arenal. I'm really sorry if I'm butchering that. In light of recent events, has there been any changes in police training in the last year? How are de-escalation techniques being incorporated into the training of Coconut Creek police officers?
Certainly, as I mentioned earlier, we have de-escalation training that we have already implemented here to our officers. We are working with Sheriff Tony, who got a grant from the Broward County Commission to deliver implicit bias training to all of our personnel. And where we are in that process is we have gotten instructors from each of our agencies here in Broward County trained up, and then they, of course, in turn deliver it to our agencies. So that is being done. Most of the policies that were recommended as a result of such as chokeholds and things like that were already in our existing policies and were already followed. But training has been enhanced significantly since much of this became an issue, particularly after the George Floyd death.
Thank you, Chief Arenal. The next question is for Representative Hunchofsky. You've been advocating strongly for bike safety reforms, specifically House Bill 605, which just left committee in the last day or so. If passed, how would this bill affect pedestrians and bike riders in Coconut Creek?
Oh, first of all, thank you so much for paying attention to what's going on. I really appreciate it. Yeah, bike and pedestrian safety is so important. What this bill does is it first of all puts in definitions for bike lanes, for separated bike lanes. It also talks about where cars need to be if they're passing. It allows cars in a no passing zone to pass if they're passing a bicycle, but it also puts in dimensions of how far away they have to be from the bicycle, and if they can't remain at a safe distance or pass safely, that they're not allowed to pass. It also includes adding more about bike and pedestrian safety questions to the test bank for the driver's license exam. And it also has an annual educational component to it that needs to be put out to teach people. A lot of bike and pedestrian safety is also, educating people on how to be safe on the road with bicyclists and pedestrians.
Okay, thank you so much. The next question will be for Commissioner Welch. Commissioner, we've heard there's going to be a Main Street in Coconut Creek. Would you mind telling us a bit more about it? Where is it going to be and what's going to be there?
Okay, well, the city has privately owned 150 acres in between the Seminole Casino at the corner of 441 and Sample Road, and the Promenade Shopping Center, which is at the corner of Wiles and Lyons. Right there in the middle is 150 acres that's privately owned. The city, however, owns 30 acres in that blank space that can be built and developed. And we are in very, very preliminary stages with 3 developers that have come together to present a conceptual plan for there. All I can tell you is this, we know that our community is very interested in residential, not rentals. And the residential would be in the form of single-family homes, villas, townhomes, and condos, as well as a huge civic component, an amphitheater, a public safety complex, lot of water features, lots of those wide trailways, which could be used for extra mobility within that large parcel, so that when you go in there, there are things for you to do while you, if you don't happen to live there, that you can work and play possibly and dine. So it's exciting. It's where our 3rd fire station is going to be built. So lots of good things to come. But, I can't release the concept, but I'm just saying the need has changed. The community's been very loud and clear what they would like to have. And I can tell you that our commission has listened. So thank you.
Thank you so much for your answer, Commissioner Welch. The next question is for Mr. Watkins. I feel like our voices are silenced. What can we do as teenagers to make an impact on social issues?
So there are many platforms that teenagers can use to, make their voices heard. And one of those is to become involved with your school organizations. Make sure that students are connected to what's happening in school and encourage each other to participate. We have lots of great organizations and clubs in our schools, and we have lots of resources. So I think that's important that we always think about what are things we can do one student at a time, and then collectively how we can advocate for change.
Great, thank you. The next question is for Representative Fanchowski. So the Florida House has passed a bill that would ban transgender children from playing sports and authorize invasive and traumatizing medical checks on any child whose gender is questioned. How would that affect both kids and teenagers in our county?
First of all, thank you very much. It's a completely unnecessary bill. I do have some good news to share. It has been temporarily postponed in the Senate, so it looks like that will not be passing this session. This was one of the bills that when I talk about it, I say my heart hurts that it was even something that was brought up in the House. It is completely unnecessary. And one of the things that I think maybe people didn't think about is that now anybody could question someone's gender and say, you know what, that person doesn't look like what I think a girl should look like. And therefore, we need to verify that. So it was nothing more than a bad bill. I am so sorry that it passed the House, but I hope that the Senate continues to hold strong and that this will not become law, because this should not be what our state is about.
Thank you so much for your answer, Representative Panchovsky. The next question is for Supervisor of Elections, Scott. In New York, there is no need to bring an ID to vote. Are IDs necessary beyond registration to vote? What is your position on voter ID?
So we've had voter ID for in-person voting in Florida for many decades now, and that's not going anywhere. The laws that are currently going through the Florida legislature would make IDs required to drop off a ballot at the drop box. And the reason that's very confusing for people is that traditionally the drop box does not require, you don't necessarily have to be dropping off your own ballot. You could be dropping off ballots for family members. You could drop off ballots for friends or neighbors. Sometimes it's because of your commute to work might take you past a drop-off location, so you take ballots for other people. So what this law would do is make it extremely confusing for people and probably cause people to not voluntarily take someone else's ballots to drop off. And the result of that will be lower voter turnout for us here in Broward County. Whereas I mentioned before, we have a heavy reliance on drop boxes.
Thank you so much. The next question is for Ms. Whitman. With new developments and businesses constantly being built, does Coconut Creek and Broward County in general have a plan to prevent urban sprawl?
Well, Coconut Creek doesn't have a lot of land left for any additional development. A lot of what we're going to be seeing in the future is going to be redevelopment. The same thing pretty much holds true for Broward County. In fact, our Main Street area is probably the last large piece of property available in the county. So by the sheer fact that we've extended and used up all of our land at this point, I think everything that you're going to see from now on is going to be redevelopment, which is a good thing. So that's that would be, I'm sure, what we're going to see moving forward. There's no opportunity for sprawl anymore in our county.
Thank you, Ms. Whitman. The next question is for Representative Panchovsky. As the former mayor of Parkland, you experienced the firsthand of the detrimental effects of gun violence in your community. Has there been any progress to reduce gun violence in the state?
Thank you for that question. Yeah, so right after the shooting, we were fortunate that the Florida legislature was still in session. And a couple of things happened regarding firearm safety laws. One of them is that red flag laws were made law of the land in the state of Florida. For those of you who aren't aware what a red flag law is, it means someone who is seen to be a harm to themselves or someone else. You can go to the courts and see about removing their weapons. Additionally, the age to purchase a rifle was raised to 21. So we did have some change. However, it's not enough. Universal background checks are something that I believe, close to 90% of the country is in favor of. And yet, for some reason, we are unable to pass that legislation. So having red flag laws is great, but if you don't have the universal background checks to make sure that you can check if somebody has a red flag on their background, it doesn't make them as effective as they could be.
Thank you, Representative Panchovsky. That was our last question for the live Q&A. Thank you. This officially concludes our live Q&A portion.
Panelists, we cannot thank you enough for being here and giving us your time this evening to hear what students have to say.
This experience has shown students the importance of using their voice, and we hope it inspires them to continue doing so throughout their life.
I know as a student who is working on this event, it has definitely inspired me. So if there are any students out there who are interested in helping create next year's Teen Political Forum, please contact your SGA representative or DM the TPF on Instagram. We'd love to have you help us next year.
And if you don't live in Coconut Creek, you can try to start a teen political forum in your own city. Just be sure to attend Coconut Creek's event next year too.
All right, well, students, it's the moment you've been waiting for. We'll now be releasing the poll to see which school has the most people in attendance. Remember, that school gets a $500 award. So we're going to release the poll right now, and we'll give you all a minute or two to get your responses in.
We're still missing some responses. Please be sure to hit submit when you're finished. We will end the poll in 1 minute.
All right, the results are in. So just remember that the winner is being chosen based on percentage of population. And we just crunched some numbers. And the winner of the $500 from Wheeler-Brader Technologies and our traveling trophy, which let me grab here, barely fits in frame, is Atlantic Technical Magnet School.
Congratulations, how exciting. Well, no matter what, just by attending this event, we are all winners. You're leaving this Zoom today with more information than when you joined, and we're so grateful that we can make this happen, even during a pandemic.
And that's it. That concludes our event. We have a quick survey that we would like everyone to fill out if you can, so that we can get your opinions and make next year an even better Teen Political Forum. We hope you all have a wonderful rest of your night, and thank you for joining us, especially you panelists.